Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric Entertaining series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, more specifically in this instance the work in progress Sega Saturn Core. Because just recently I did a core update video and talked about how Radiant Silvergun felt perfect and asked if you guys wanted to see a long-term test. That's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Because Radiant Silvergun has gone through so many different bug fixes, so many different freezing issues, it really feels like the final boss for Sega Saturn on MiSTer FPGA, so we're going to talk about it today. Before I get too far involved, it'd be a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. It definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But when this game first started booting, first it would have graphical glitches and basically freeze before you could ever even get in game. But for the longest time, right here, once you'd actually take control of your playable ship after this dialogue, the game would just hard lock up. You'd be able to run the game up until this point in time, but the minute the ships dropped down and you would see this little text pop up, you would basically lock up the game and you wouldn't be able to play any further than that. And I think that problem persisted for probably over a year. We'd always test Radiant Silvergun every new core, hoping that that freezing issue went away, because not only was it important for the core's overall progress and being able to test against previous cores, it's also just one of the best shmups on the Sega Saturn, so people definitely just wanted to play it. And obviously you can see today that is 100% not the case. You get past that little taking control portion perfectly fine, you can jump right into the game. From there was always graphical corruption in either the layers or the sprites. There'd be things that were not in the right place, some blinds in the background, just overall it would not look like Radiant Silvergun should. And that's not a knock against the core, of course it's always in development, but it was something that we'd always go back into this game and check graphical glitches on. It would get better over time, but it would always be lacking a little bit compared to real Sega Saturn hardware. But on the most recent update of the core, the last graphical glitch that I was ever able to find has been fixed, and what you see today feels like a perfect Radiant Silvergun. And this is definitely one of the better games to test just because it is a shmup, getting close to the bullet hell territory but not quite. So you want to have quick reaction times, you want to have zero lag in your controls, you want to have that responsiveness that MiSTer FPGA and real hardware brings, or else you're going to have a very difficult time playing this game. And do be aware, I am not an expert at it in any way, shape, or form, so I'm definitely going to be taking some deaths here throughout this capture. But as we move into the second area, and you get these semi-transparent effects coming over top of the screen with all of the different projectiles moving around, all of the different enemy sprites coming in, and the parallax scrolling, making it look like 3D going on in the background. Everything just clicks, everything looks good. Honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to tell whether or not I was playing a real Sega Saturn or MiSTer FPGA. The only real giveaway would be the fact that this is an HDMI signal, so it's going to be a little bit clearer and a little bit more crisp than the Saturn's native RGB out, although I always insist, as far as RGB consoles are concerned, Saturn has the best video output on RGB of any console ever made. You can leave a comment down below and tell me what you think, but it's always been near to a perfect output. But as we get a little further in, again, like I said, I'm going to be taking some deaths, and that is because Radiant Silvergun is an insanely complex game. But all of the deaths I am taking are because I'm not reading the screen correctly, and it's been a few years since I played this game for any good duration of time, although I've been playing this a metric crap ton for MiSTer FPGA test, because again, this feels like the final boss of the core. But all of the visuals here, all of the gameplay, I really struggle to see anything to my eye that makes me think it's not doing anything other than what real hardware would do. But pay close attention to everything you're seeing, and if you notice anything whatsoever, do leave me a comment down below, because I say in pretty much every video, I only have two eyes and I stare at this footage for editing, so sometimes I do miss something that is right in front of my face, and you guys pick up on it in a nice way. I depend on you to notice these things, and when you do, I will go over to MiSTer Discord, talk about it with some other people that like to test, and they'll see if they can replicate it as well. And if that is in fact something that can be replicated, it usually gets submitted to GitHub as an issue ticket, so SRG320 can take a look at it in the background, because a lot of these bugs get fixed up after they're mentioned. But as far as the soundtrack is concerned, it's a 10 out of 10 for Radiant Silvergun, and it sounds incredible coming out of the core, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with more. An absolutely awesome soundtrack that sounds incredible coming out of the core, and that's always the interesting thing with sound samples, especially for me personally. You guys have heard things in some of the sound that I never noticed whatsoever, but I always talk about in the videos. I have a tin ear. Hearing differences in audio is just not something I'm very attuned to. I am a filmmaker for a living, and I've been doing that for 21 years now, so honestly, I am way more visually inclined to notice something that isn't correct than I am to hear something that is incorrect. Sometimes it's so obvious that even I can pick up on it, but again, listen to that soundtrack sample maybe a second time if you need to, just to see if there's anything about it that seems off, because to me it just sounds absolutely like it should. And you'll see here you do get a mix of 3D and 2D visuals as well. Some of the actual landscape here is going to be made up of polygons or quads in Saturn's instance, and some of the items are obviously going to be made up of 2D as well. It is a very fun mix on Radiant Silvergun, just as what is 3D and what is 2D, and that is all done in conjunction with VDP1 and VDP2, drawing the image to the screen, and it has to all work perfectly or else you're going to notice some sort of visual glitch or other draw issue, maybe a missing texture, maybe a polygon that isn't displaying correctly. But again, as we play the game here, the takeaway is you can just play the game and stop thinking about the fact that this is an FPGA core and not real Sega Saturn hardware. That is always the line you want to blur when you know things are getting accurate enough to be playable. Do you even stop and think and look for problems anymore, or do you just sit down and enjoy the game? Because when I was capturing this for the core update video, I realized after about 5 or 6 minutes, I was just sitting down and enjoying playing Radiant Silvergun, and even I stopped to look at what was actually going on the screen and look for more issues, because I just ended up having fun with the game and not paying attention to why I was capturing in the first place, which was trying to see how it's improved on the most recent core patch notes. And that's what you want out of any single MiSTer FPGA core or an FPGA core in any device. You want to stop thinking about the technology that's running the game, and you want to just start thinking about playing the game, because absolutely nobody puts a game into their Sega Saturn and presses power to think about what hardware is actually running in the background. They just put the game in the console, expect to have fun, and hopefully they do depending on what game they pick. And that is where the core is heading, and for the most part is already there. You can stop thinking about all of the FPGA code, the VHDL and Verilog keeping this thing together, and you can just start playing games like you're putting a disc in real Sega Saturn hardware, and that's all we ever want out of it. And if you did notice a little bit of hitch in the video there, I was not able to recreate that when I tried to test a second and third time on this stage, so it's very likely that my video capture card just decided to have a little hiccup. They do it all the time. Capture cards are some of the most annoying technology around. When they work well, and when they decide that they don't feel like working very well, they will give you an absolute migraine of a headache just trying to get them to do anything. But I am going to check with some other people to see if they've had any of that hitching in this area as well, because that's the thing about actually hunting down bugs. Sometimes they do exist and sometimes they don't, so I'll have to do a little bit more research on that hitch. But it's time for one more soundtrack sample, because the soundtrack is great and I want you to hear the audio quality. 30 seconds this time, and I'll come back and tell you more about just how much Radiant Silvergun has improved from the first time we were able to play it till today. But enjoy, because again, the soundtrack is awesome. So yeah, again, absolutely nothing about ear that makes me think this is anything other than the Radiant Silvergun soundtrack running on real Sega Saturn hardware. And I just love this game and how inventive it is. Obviously, this video is more talking about the FPGA core and just how far it's come, but I do just need to address the elephant in the room to say that Radiant Silvergun is an absolutely epic shmup that combines the best of 2D and 3D together, as well as having a metric crap ton of challenge, just giving you one of the best shmups of the Sega Saturn era. But trust me, it is 10 out of 10 hard, and even with increasing the amount of lives I have here, this is as far as I got in this playthrough. But it's an excellent game to test on the Sega Saturn core, because again, it's one of Saturn's most popular, as well as the fact that it's always had bugs basically throughout the entire development process of the Saturn core. This is the one game that everyone would jump back into to see if it's improved, and it definitely has. And of course you have the arcade mode as well. I played through the first 2 levels of that, and absolutely nothing changed compared to the Saturn version, so I figured they were at par. And that really is where we're at with Radiant Silvergun, and for most games games on the core. They seem to be running exactly 1-to-1 at par with what real Sega Saturn hardware would do. I know a lot of you guys wanted to see more Radiant Silvergun testing, so I figured why not. But if there's any other games you want to see long-term tests on, where I do a 10-minute video testing just one game in the Saturn library on the MiSTer FPGA Core, leave me a comment down below. Or if you want to see a best of Sega Saturn testing video out of the best games, I might do that as well if you guys are interested. But we are done. Go play some Saturn. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.